2019, we're at 6 p.m. I have Council Matusky.
Here.
Council Matusky is present. We do not have a quorum at this moment, but the other members should be here shortly. So we can take a 5-minute recess.
Motion, well, there's no motion,
Right.
there's no members here, they'll be here momentarily.
And we will
Mr. Cannon and
reconvene.
Mr. Simonelli.
And we have Council Simonelli. Council Simonelli. We have 2 members present. Waiting, Chairman McKinnon. Tony? I didn't know that.
Okay,
All right, we're going to begin an informal discussion. The item that is actually before the committee is a resolution by Councilor Matusky and Napolitano that a representative from the Water Billing Department appear to answer questions about the new monthly water bills and the change from a quarterly to a monthly system.
It's not on. It's supposed to be a monthly bill. So when you go into 33 days, you're using a little bit more water, and it could put you into that other category. Then there's a church on Elm Street. They just called me the other day, I think the church that you wanted here a few months ago. They got a $4,000 water bill, and they don't have a swimming pool in the church, so that's the one across from the Elm Street Bakery. I think it's the Baptist. You recall, Councilman Napolitano, the church that was their 100th anniversary? You gave them a citation. Oh, you were, okay, so, make a long story short, I can get that address. There's only one church down there anyway, but that's not the Zion, but this is on Elm Street, a little further on down, Methodist. It's an older church on the left-hand side. The gentleman, I told him to come up here and see the 311 people and see if they could square it away, but I'm going to let Councilman Simonelli, I'm going to let Councilman Napolitano go, and then any questions we have, we'll move forward. Councilman Napolitano?
Thank you. The main thing that I was concerned with was that on the day that it was, first of all, I have no issue with monthly billing. I think it's how most people craft their budgets. So in that respect, I think it's a great way to go. And it doesn't appear that residents are paying any more for the result of that. But there are two chief things came up. First of all, the day that it went out, the line, my understanding, was out the door. And that's something that really, we're making a transition. People that are used to coming up and paying their bills personally, fine, I'm not sure, it doesn't appear that we were really prepared for that change-up. Instead of everybody getting their bills staggered, getting them all in one shot. So I'm just concerned that going forward that there is steps taken to alleviate that on the next go-around of monthly bills. The other thing was that I've seen this on a few other people's bills, is they were getting charged a late fee on their bill. They're not behind. When they told me when they raised the question when they were paying their bill, they were being told that, well, when we issue these bills, you're going to get them, it's already going to be past due, so we've built in a late fee. I'm hoping that the city has taken in some consideration for that, because realistically, it's not so much the residents or the homeowners' fault that the bills are going out late. To assess them a late fee just because they're not going to get it in time, I think the onus is on us for them not getting it in time in the first place, whatever that reason may be. And late fees are something that I don't think should be assessed. So that was my main concerns. From last Monday, from the Monday that the bills came out, straight through, wasn't a place in the city you can go where people didn't corner you or ask you, what's the story with that? So I just want to make sure that we get some straight information out, and you're aware of the type of issues and feedback that's coming back from through us from the residents.
Certainly, and I apologize for the confusion as we've switched from quarterly to monthly billing. As you pointed out, it certainly is easier for budgeting purposes. It allows residents to track their water usage and address any leaks as they arise. We've been working with Kelly Ryan to address the issue with the invoicing that occurred. There was an overlap in the billing cycle that shouldn't have occurred, and that We've looked at it very closely. We've implemented additional checks and balances to address the issue so that won't occur in the future. And in order to, smooth out the monthly process and address the monthly billing, the city has worked to expedite an online payment system so that residents throughout the community can now pay their monthly bill online, which should address also some of that influx that you've seen at City Hall. Certainly, I know there were a number of questions specific to the interest payment, and if we haven't received a payment yet, is the interest going to be applied or not applied? Typically, even with any credit card that you would use, if they don't receive the payment so many days prior to the bill going out, it's just not in the system yet. We've worked with our billing software, SoftWrite, and Kelly Ryan to make sure that any of these late charges or interest charges are being credited to the account. So there was never an intent to assess a late fee during this grace period as we switch over. Certainly a number of properties have P.O. boxes or may not check their mail as frequently if they're expecting a quarterly bill. So we expected a certain number of people to be coming in and saying, oh, I don't check my P.O. box every day, I didn't get this. But ideally, a number of these comments are going to hopefully resolve this month, and we've certainly corrected it moving forward. So as we get those few quarterly bill people back into the system, I believe a number of these issues will resolve themselves. Right. When we switched to a monthly system, unfortunately, February being a short month, there was less time in the bill cycle, and just 3 times as many bills to process on a monthly basis as opposed to a quarterly basis, and there was an oversight in that in the dates that were chosen between.
And it's a little confusing who people call when they have a problem with their water bill. Who do they actually call? Do they go to the treasurer's office?
So 311 certainly can direct
311?
them to the collector's office, I believe, currently.
Let me just add a couple of things, because we also have done some staffing reorganizations as well. And the clerical individual that's in the water department has always been down at the DPW facility. And one of the things we've been trying to do is to not have the residents have to go down to that end of town. Certainly the elderly, the last thing we want to do is have them come up here and then say, oh no, we can't see that, you have to go down to the DPW facility and talk to the water department. So what we've done is we've actually moved that individual right up here and put them into the collector's office. So they're not necessarily a collector's office employee, they're still a water department employee. That's the individual that is responsible for pulling the reads and generating the bills. Now that individual is right here at City Hall, because predominantly when people have issues and they want to come talk to somebody, they're coming to City Hall. And it pains us to have to say, no, you actually have to go down there, or call this number, call the water department. So we just relocated that individual right up in here in City Hall, one-stop shopping, because even though parking here is tough, it's even tougher down to the DPW facility. So we think that's one of the ways that will help alleviate situations and allow us to answer residents' questions immediately without having them to give them a number or send them to another location. In addition to that, one of the things that we heard, got a lot of feedback during that time. Obviously, there was confusion because of the software issue and the overlapping, the 3 days in the billing. We've worked with both software vendors to say that isn't happening. As Mr. St. Louis said, in addition to that, we also have told them that any of those interest charges and late fees are to be credited back. That certainly wasn't the city's intention. And we didn't know that that was going to be happening because we never even directed the software companies to do that until the bills were actually generated that second time. So there was no time to react. But one of the other pieces of feedback that we received is a lot of individuals said, well, we like monthly billing, as you said, and that was one of the reasons most people live on a monthly budget and it's easier for your budgeting. But they said, if we are going to get bills monthly, we'd like to set up an auto pay. Now, that's something the city's never used because the city hasn't actually ever billed people on a monthly basis. You know, people are going to be uncomfortable setting up an auto pay on a quarterly basis because that's the only 4 times a year can they see their actual usage. So we very quickly worked with our credit card company and said, hey, listen, we need you to expedite this. We have a lot of our residents asking for an auto pay, just like you would do with a number of your other utility bills. And I'm happy to say, as of yesterday afternoon, that was up and running. They turned that around for us real quickly. So when individuals actually now will go online, the way they have in the past, to pay their bills, there's going to be a box right there, and it's immediately going to ask them, would you like to set up an auto pay? So we're actually helping them by eliminating the need for them to even have to come up to address those issues. In addition to that, not realizing that with the water department billing issues and that we had those lines out the door, we actually did reallocate some staff. And that first day, which was the day following a snowstorm, so I think that made things even worse because even though City Hall was open that day, it did open late. The building wasn't open until 11 o'clock that day, and a lot of people just have a lot of other things to do, like dealing with the snow. So we probably had twice the amount of traffic on that Tuesday. And once we realized that, we started reallocating staff. We had an individual with a medical issue that was out. We also had an individual that I use as a bullpen, if you will, a utility player that was on vacation that week. And that's one of the individuals that anytime there's overflow in the collector's office, I can grab that individual and send them in there because we never want to see lines in there. And I can tell you the mayor never wants to see lines in there. So over the past few months, I've been having individuals throughout City Hall cross-trained, not because of this issue, but because it's just a good practice. You know, you never know when somebody's going to go out on medical leave. So individuals that we've already had cross-trained so that we can pull them out of one department to put them into another department that has great needs, that individual wasn't available either. So fortunately, I did have 2 others individuals that were cross-trained. So even though they were assigned to different offices, we were constantly pulling them out and putting them into the collector's office to assist with that. In addition, it gets a little tough because any of our employees that are required to work in that office need to be bonded. So I've also been in process of bonding other individuals as well. So not only are we having them cross-trained, but we're having them bonded. And by the time we got to Thursday, even though there was more of a wait than traditionally there would be, we didn't have the lines out the door. I actually set up on one of the computer screens in my office with the cameras, and that just constantly monitoring it. And anytime we were seeing excess overflow, was just grabbing people to send them in there to assist into the collector's office, just so that we could mitigate the amount of time that individuals would have to wait. So unfortunately, we had a lot of planning. I worked with Mr. St. Louis in the water department prior to this, implementing to a monthly billing cycle, and we went step by step and implemented changes and thought everything out. What we didn't realize is that the software company was going to have, with the 2 software companies communicating, doing their own thing and making their own assumptions. And then given that that was the first month where we really went to billing and it was a short month, some of their assumptions didn't work out. So we've had conversations with the software companies. Again, we got the late fees waived and credited back, the interest credited back and applied to the accounts. Because again, that was never our intention. And then on top of that, working with the water department also has an outside consultant that assists with the billing. I met with them a couple of times this week and last week, and mapping out all of the billing cycles for the remainder of the year and then moving forward. So I'm also working with them to ensure that any of our issues that we need to address are addressed moving forward, because we weren't happy with the situation as well. You know, we're really big on customer service. And, you know, I have all of my departments, and I know Mr. St. Louis does with his water department as well. It's customer service. That's what we're here for. So that was extremely frustrating for us as well, that the issues
Good, it seems
happened.
like you're on the right track, and anything new is a little confusing to anybody, really. Would you consider doing, or the mayor consider doing, a press release to the citizens of the city in our local papers explaining you know, where they can go to get water information. Now it's at City Hall, as opposed to the city yards or the DPW department. And explain that credit card payment, if it comes through. Is that coming through, did you say?
I'm happy to report that our credit card processor listened, and they really expedited that for us, and it was up and running as of last night.
So you could explain that along
Yes.
with the new employee in the collector's office, and explain that there was a change in the billing cycle, a lapse, the 33-day thing. That's what concerned the people that called me. And do you have any questions, Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you for Councilman Simonelli. So 30 days times 12 is not 365 days, so there has to be an overlap of over 30 days in some part of the billing cycle.
Well, that's where the glitch is.
So maybe you could ask,
Well, you can ask them.
So ultimately, there would be a short month somewhere in the
29
system?
days and then 33 days, so.
Right.
So that should be answering your question or no?
Yeah, it's pretty much, yes, it does answer my question. I want to appreciate that you bringing that up. But-
And in addition to that, working with the software companies, just to address the issue that you're talking about as well, instead of cutting that bill, pulling those reads, and then immediately having that bill come due and issuing the bill, we're looking at maybe doing in arrears, so that when you receive the bill, it's for the prior month, so that the billing will be in a month in arrears, and that gives you the time to go through and make the payments. That way, it gives the water department their ability, it's something that their consultant's looking into right now. It gives the water department the ability to not have to rush to actually pull those down again in case somebody's sick. You know, all of our software is all cloud-based. We have internet issues at times and when things go down. So to make sure that we can provide absolute consistency in that billing, that's something that's being looked at as well. But yeah, and some months will be a short and some months will be longer than others. But at the end of the day, the rates that you were paying before quarterly are consistent with the rates what you're paying on a monthly basis. So nobody's going to be paying more than what they normally would have. It's just, again, from a budgeting standpoint. But I got to tell you, one of the things that the water department, when they originally said, we want to consider doing this about 8 months ago, here's one of the issues that we have. And unfortunately, it impacts our elderly population more with the hearing. A lot of times we'll have individuals, a lot of the elderly, where they'll have a leaky toilet. They'll have a toilet that's constantly running. And in some cases on those quarterly billings, they can run for 90 days and they're not aware of it. And unfortunately, under Mass General Law, there's not a lot that the city can do if they've actually used the water. So we'll send, Mr. St. Louis will send one of his technicians out to make sure that the meter is operating properly and that the readings are properly and there's no tampering being done. Once it's determined that all of the equipment is properly working, but you have a leaky toilet or you have a leaky faucet that's running, we have really no means under Mass General Law to give them a refund on that because they've actually used the water and the city's paying for that water. So by doing it on a monthly basis, at least they're going to know that, hey, listen, there's an issue. So instead of it being $30, $100 more, it's only going to be $30 more that they're going to have because they're going to be able to address whatever leaky faucet or toilet that they have. And that's one of our biggest things is people coming in and we're saying, we really want to help you, but you actually use the water, the equipment's working properly, and the city's paying for it.
And that does occur. I had an individual call me from Vine Street about 3 years ago, and he said, my water bill is through it was an elderly gentleman. He was homebound. Well, I asked the city department to go down there and check. His garden hose on the side of his house was running for 3 or 4 months, and his water bill that day, and the city called me. They said, Wayne, you're not going to believe it, but this guy's hose spout was turned on. He didn't even know it because he never leaves the house. He was a sick man. But these incidents occur, and you'll be able to identify that, red flag them. I think that's a great savings, too,
Absolutely.
for people to know exactly, you got a tenant, for instance, or tenants in a particular apartment, and the landlord gets a bill, and they're not fixing the toilet or telling them about it, or the faucets or whatever it may be, And that adds up, I'm sure.
We've had a lot of landlords give us a call when they receive the quarterly billing and say, hey, there's something wrong with our meter. Instantly, Mr. St. Louis and the water department will send somebody out, and it turns out that one of their new tenants may be using a lot more water for whatever reasons than their prior tenants. So it has the ability, it
There you
gives the
go.
landlords much more information on the usage that their tenants.
I haven't really gotten any complaints about the monthly billing. I just want to let you know that, so the switch is not the problem. It's the newness of it all. So I suggest, I know this is informal, but the chairman is not here, so, and the sponsor of this piece is here, though, along with me. We're both sponsored at Councilman Napolitano. We've made some headway. We've got some good information, and I'll report this to the full body, but I suggest that you do a press release from the water department letting people know where they can come with an issue. And it looks like Councilman Simonelli's going to have a question here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you for Councilman Simonelli. We think the monthly billing, Councilman Simonelli thinks the monthly billing is a good thing in the long run for the people. They will save money by the monthly billing. Mr. Chairman, through you for our invited guests, just a point of interest for people that pay their water bill quarterly, that will now be paying their water bill monthly, and maybe they can explain this to me. If you use the gallons, or the proper term, whatever it is, 6, we'll use the example 6, and you were paying for 3 months 18, now will you be paying, how does that stop? At what point does it go from 5.1 one month to 4.3 the next, to 5.6? How does it shift to a higher level or a lower level at a certain point?
Sure. So there's a tier structure in the city.
Yes.
So the break is 100 cubic feet. So when you see your water bill, it's in 100 cubic feet of water used, which is not a small amount of water. It's a substantial amount of water.
So when you say 6 on the bill, would that be 600 cubic feet?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if you were at 6.1 cubic feet, does it go to 7? How do you get in between that?
Right. So as the water spins your meter, it slowly counts up, and then that number is reported twice a day to the city system via a cloud-based software. So we can see that if your garden hose breaks and you go from a 10 unit a month house to a 400 unit a month house, as soon as that increase spikes, the software is designed to alert us, hey, this usage is excessive, and we basically create a ticket for the clerk to call the number that we have on record. They reach out a second, a third time to try and get that addressed so that we don't end up in an abatement process or having other meetings that could otherwise be avoided.
So just so I can be clear, Mr. Chairman, so if I used 1 gallon more than the 100, I get charged for the 100?
You would have already used the 100?
Allotted.
Correct.
So unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, if you go over 1 gallon,
Different category.
automatically.
You're going to a higher,
Bemoan from the
the
city.
more water you use, the more you pay, well, naturally.
Well, right. And we did look at a number of different scenarios to compare quarterly billing to monthly billing, and it's really a monthly average that you're looking at.
Okay.
And as you can see from some of the tier structures that are posted, it's a 60-cent difference for that extra gallon, if you will.
Okay.
But ultimately, that's coming out of next month's unit as well. So maybe you pay an extra $3 in month 1, but you pay $3 less in month 2 because that unit's already paid for.
That's very good, Mr. Chairman, because there was a little confusion with people out there. They thought that they were going to be charged extra because they were paying monthly as opposed to quarterly.
That's
But
right,
then
yeah.
Mr. Sinclair just explained.
Well, I think we've cleared
It's
some
an official.
issues up. Councilman Napolitano, any comment?
No, I think you've summarized the issues. We're aware of why the interest charges were assessed or late payments, and those are being remedied. And I just think it's important that the public is aware of that. You've taken additional provisions to add both paperless, charges, the ability to put on auto payment, and you put extra people on. That's, again, it's preparing yourself better for the next go-around, especially looking at how many bills go out in a given cycle, addressing the billing cycles. Now, these are, I mean, again, on one hand, it'd be great if they were proactive moves, but they're not. And that's no one's fault, because this is also a large-scale project. This is not just as simple as flipping a switch and the bills go out monthly. And it's important for people to understand that. But the steps you've taken have more than satisfied me as far as addressing these issues. The types of comments, complaints, griping I've been hearing about it, those issues, I haven't heard anything that anybody told me that isn't being addressed. So as long as we get the public, made the public aware of this, I'm fine with this.
Very good. One other question. The meters, the little, they still, I got one on the side of my house. Those still in use, right? Those little blue boxes?
Correct.
So they still work? I mean, this thing was put in years ago, I know.
So the physical meter is located on your water line, likely in your basement.
The physical one, yeah.
There's a transmitter, if you will, that usually is run up and out.
And it runs right out the house, yeah. And they were installed,
I think we're close to year 6 now.
Just
Before
6
my
years ago,
time,
right.
Usually
Okay.
meters last somewhere in the
I
range of 10
forgot that we
years.
had them all, the whole city was replaced. That's right, so.
Correct.
Yeah, there was a big discussion 6 years ago about Wi-Fi signals and whether that was creating an additional issue for the, for the public. It was, we were given,
So the meters are read through somebody driving by?
So the old system relied on typically a staff member in a van going house to house,
Right,
getting a
yeah.
reading. And then sometimes if the device you are referring to on the outside of your house is broken or misreading, then they would have to estimate reads. And that's generally frowned upon by the MWRA and the DOR. So having daily reading is ultimately much more accurate, provides all the benefits.
So
we've
how do you do it
discussed.
now? I missed that part.
It uploads via cell signal effectively.
Oh, a cell signal.
Correct.
So you have to drive by or just from the,
Yeah, you no longer have to drive by. It transmits directly to
wow. Technology,
the cloud.
it's good to know. I think we've covered the basis pretty much of what I wanted to know, and Councilman Napolitano. What do we do when there's not a quorum? Refer it ball to the council? Oh, well, we'll,
It's up to you. You can take it,
I'll tell Leo and,
you can take this out of committee because you got the information you wanted.
right.
It's up to the chairman if he wants to keep it in.
You mean
committee
Leo?
at that meeting.
Okay, no,
I
we're the
I just have a
sponsors.
question for the clerk, because again, that's fine. Would we receive a copy of the informal, will it be an informal
You
report?
have to do a report because hopefully you'll be able to,
That's exactly what my
Okay,
my
great.
plan was. So we
All
will
right.
do, if we can get a copy of the report, then when it comes before us, we can take it out of committee.
And just so you gentlemen know, you won't, this will not appear in a committee again. We are going,
you don't know that.
well, I will speak to Councilman McKinnon, who I spoke with last night and said he would be here. I hope he's all right. He might be, they're doing a testimonial down the hall. He might be there. And Councilman Marquez, I believe, is ill. So with that being said, we're the sponsors, so when it does come back to the floor of the council, we'll explain what you gentlemen have told us tonight, and I appreciate you being here and your busy schedules, and excuse with the customary thanks. And for those members on the committee, Councilman Simonelli, we have some bills to sign in the back. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you, everyone, for their patience.